Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Outfluencer and your powerful presence mentor. I have a super special guest with me today. I'm so excited. It's just great. I don't know. You could probably sense my excitement on this. I met Amelia through the Big Talk Academy. She's a speaker, an entrepreneur, an actor, and a mom of two. She created the Be Happy business. We're going to talk about that. She created that as a way of infusing more happiness into all aspects of life. And right now, we could all use a dose of more happiness. It just makes me smile thinking about that. So I love that. Because she's all about mindset and personal development, I invited her to join us today. Actually, I invited her to join us because in a riveting speech, she said some things that shook me. One of which was, it doesn't get more real than what an actor does. That was like, what? So Amelia, with all that, welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. It is very exciting to be here. I'm very honored to be connected to you and be able to call you a new colleague and friend. And I'm already learning so much from you. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I think we're going to be learning a lot from each other, and we're going to be giving our audience so much. So let's talk about your journey, right? What got you into acting and entrepreneurship? Because those aren't the same, right? Those are most people don't think I'm going to be an actor. No, I'm going to start a business. No, I'm going to do both. Oh, by the way, I'm going to become a parent along the way. So with those challenges, talk a little bit about your journey. What got you here? And I'll ask you some questions along the way too.
Totally. Well, I think I'm so enamored with how life unfolds. And it is always, you set out to do certain things in certain ways according to your own guidance and also what's being told that you need to do to get to where you need to go. And then really, I don't think of anybody that I know where it goes as planned or where it goes as planned. And I think, in life, there can be a lot of resistance to that and you can feel wrong and like you're not enough. But I've just gotten to this point. I think it's also part of getting older where I just have totally fallen in love with the unfolding of my life and looked back on the times when I've just been so like impatient or unsatisfied with the way it's, not unfolding in whatever timeline I thought. And I find myself at this, I call it like a metamorphosis moment of realizing just how perfect it all has been and how much it has completely served, where I'm landing right now, like coming out of Big Talk Academy, which I love that we share that platform, through, I knew that I needed to do that program. And, I think that statement, when you're ready, the teacher appears. And that absolutely is what happened with Trisha. But that's a round way of saying, as soon as I could conceive of anything I wanted to do, it was acting for sure. And in my talk, I talk about how I was in the Lullaby League Munchkin and Wizard of Oz when I was 7 and I caught the bug. And I had heartache when it ended. And that's just, what I was going to do. And then, so that is what I did all the way, up until about 5 or 6 years ago. And
you were a munchkin?
I was a munchkin, 7 years old. And the thing that caused a shift, and I didn't really know it was a shift at the time, but it was, finding my husband, starting a family, and I was still auditioning all the way up till 9 months pregnant. And then I think this natural shift occurred where, I had a belief that I couldn't like really make money how I wanted to acting. And I just was really into parenting all of a sudden, things I never thought that I would be into, like marriage and parenting. And then came this thing of like a sales career because I wanted to find flexible work from home. And I was really into that idea. And so, this company came into my lap that I loved and I kind of just went with it. And I success there, which really surprised me, but I decided to go with that. And it was just perfect because through arriving there, I arrived at the world of personal development. And that is what lit me up the most about being in sales. I heard a phrase that your business will only grow as much as you do. And that resonated with me so much. And so the personal growth and discovery of, how to find your limiting beliefs and, break through them and reach the next levels in who you are so you can become and attract higher levels of success. And I also was sales coaching. So coming at it from the vantage point of helping people get to their next level and identify and bust through limiting beliefs they might have, like that made me incredibly fulfilled. And I loved it, loved it, loved it. And so 5 or 6 years passed with that. And then I start getting, I started speaking at our sales conferences, and I would get this really overwhelming response. And a lot of what I was speaking on was not necessarily the nuts and bolts of sales, but the mindset behind it all and how to just light yourself up, finding and enacting your purpose. And this idea that people, hear your music and not your words. And how do you infuse your unique music into your sales work? That's how you have your specific sales career that can really thrive. So
I want to pause you for a second.
Sure.
Because along the way, you've got this beautiful story, and along the way, there are so many gems, right? It's like you didn't accidentally pursue an acting career after 7 years old, right? You got the bug, and it was one of those, that's not an easy task to go into acting. Right. So through school, you knew this was something. Through after school, you knew this was something. You had to go through audition after audition. You had failures, you had successes. Something kept you going. So I want to go back and talk about that. Then I want to talk about the mindset of lighting up and finding your purpose, because that's huge. That part is gigantic. And the whole concept of everything grows when you grow, right? Your business, your family, when you have a stronger personal presence, it's what I call a powerful presence. When you have that, everything thrives. So you've got this beautiful kind of life path that you've just described, and I'm going to come back and sort of divide it up. Right. So talk a little bit about the acting piece. Talk a little bit more about the sales piece. And then I absolutely, definitely, fully, truly want to dive into the mindset of lighting up and finding your purpose and bringing that light into your sales, because we're all always in sales. Right? That as humans, we are projecting something to the world. So shouldn't that be a light of some sort?
Absolutely.
All right. So with all that, do you want to fill in some gaps about, because life isn't always easy, right? So, I mean, you talk about, well, it didn't always go as planned. And you did find this metamorphosis moment. So the reason that I'm interrupting you, because it's a great story, and the reason I'm interrupting you is because there's so much out of each little piece of your story that we can use as like a stepping stone,
Absolutely.
So do you mind going back and talking about what was it like? Like you couldn't have had full on certainty that you were going to get this next gig and this next gig. And so how do you overcome the doubts, right? That's a big thing. Like, there's one part and 300 people show up. What happens for you? How do you keep going when the odds are seemingly against you?
Right. Absolutely. It's everybody says, don't pursue acting unless you absolutely must. Because it is one of the most rejectionary professions, right? And all the numbers and all the things. But I loved it because I just so loved moving hearts and minds. And I've always been a very empathetic person. I'm an empath. I feel things very deeply. And I felt this innate ability to gather information and then translate it and deliver it in ways of which the discovery of that information filled my cup so fully. And then I was able to deliver it to an audience in a way that filled their cup or took them somewhere else. I've become very interested in like pattern interrupting and the things, how we're affected by what we see and how our hearts and minds are moved. So, really it was a love of people and an understanding of kind of this deep intrinsic fabric of life. And then there's nothing quite like the rush of being able to tap into that in a raw place, shape it and deliver it and have this like pure, almost holy communication with an audience.
That's fabulous. That part is the magic, isn't it? Is that there is a raw place. And, when we talk about it doesn't get more real than what an actor does. That's my favorite line. That you have to live in that raw place, right? And not be afraid of it. And not be afraid.
Right. And so it's interesting. I love that you're asking me to segment these three things differently, because right now in this moment, it's all just become one.
That's mastery, right? That's mastery.
Right. So then my eureka moment, I got to go forward to go back into sales.
Yeah.
My eureka moment came, when I'd been on a break from acting for 5 or 6 years, deep in this personal development world and sales training and in doing sales myself. And then being called to speak more from speaking at conferences. And I had, I entered into Trisha's program, not really knowing what I would talk about, but the concept and idea was so ready to be articulated that now it's just rushing forward in more ways than I can hardly wrap my mind around. But it's that idea of people, the tools with which we have to unlock ourselves and unlock our stories, and the charge and power we have within those stories. And it could be any story. It's like a story on stage. It's a story of you sitting down to make your sales calls with your ideas in your head of why you can't, why you're going to get rejected, why it's not going to work. And this deep examination of our default modes of thinking and operating, and the passionate invitation to practice within that differently, and not just accept on the surface our default mode. And that is why acting is so incredible and worth studying, because you get inside that and you get to be at the wheel, and you get to discover so much about yourself and other people. And then you also get to do that. It's the same thing, growing yourself to further potential in any business venture, and in trying to get a desired response from someone else through the point of service, really seeing where you are, really seeing where the other person might be, and being able to communicate very effectively. But so I'm
just smiling so big here, right? You have this style, this personal style of life is just amazing, and look at the poppy field, and the sun is coming up, and beneath all of that is this massive amount of wisdom that you've acquired along the way, the tools that we have to unlock our stories and the power behind our stories. That's pretty amazing, right? That we do have those tools. And here's, I'm pausing to highlight some of the nuggets, the gems that you're dropping, that you probably don't even know you're dropping. You just said we need to practice differently and not just accept our default. That's massive. Like that could be a chapter in a book, that one concept, right? So really, really want to drive that home. We need to practice differently and not just accept our default. And that goes from the time we wake up and we see our partners, to our kids, to the people at the grocery store, to the people at work, how we approach our work. We need to practice differently and not just accept our default. I think that's like, if I were to pause or end our segment here, that's like monumental.
Well, and I love that you brought that up, because all this is turning into a book. Like, we set out to write this 8-minute talk, and so much came up for me that I'm forming chapters in this book, and like I want to teach a master class on this stuff, because just that one thing. Why I love that I get to approach this, and it will be approaching it and am from my actor standpoint, is that I realize that we can that's what actors do. They receive a story, and we can pretend it doesn't have to be someone else's story. We receive, like, my work in this is going to be you in your mind and in your life, applying the tools which are used when a story is given to you and you're building a character from scratch, and the ways in which to think about yourself, the questions in which to ask to get you to a new frame of mind that's needed to achieve the result the story is asking for. To create yourself anew from a conscious place, because we're just running around being ourselves all day, and it's easy to not be conscious of that. But an actor receiving a new character has to be so conscious of, like, discovering who that person is, what they want, why they want it. And then in rehearsal, practice and rehearsal, which we get to do in our own lives, if you think of it this way, you get to change your story. You get to experiment. Like, say there's a scene that plays over and over again, say with your spouse or your children, that is very patterned, and it goes the same way every day, even though you're like, well, I'm going to try to do it differently. You can say, oh, I'm going to try to do it differently. And then you get triggered in all the same ways, and it just plays out in the same annoying, terrible way, and those patterns get deeper and deeper. But I'm realizing that we can start to teach and learn these tools that an actor uses to don't even consult your scene partner, right? Your husband and your children, but you can come at it from a more conscious place and make a different motivation and ask a different question, which will naturally produce an authentic result and impulse from you that is different. And then you can change the entire outcome. And it's not hard, and it's not fake. In my talk, I make a joke about our perceptions of what's real and fake, and what's put on and what's not. And that's why I say it doesn't get more real than what actors do, because while they're creating something, quote unquote, fictitious, they are creating something that changes themselves, changes a moment, changes someone's response. And when used for good, for the power of good, this work, I just believe, will be transformative. And it's small, and it's easy, and it's simple, and you can practice it. And the amount of empowerment and purpose that can be found this way, people all on their own can find, and it's not them taking on some other character and being someone else. It's like, no, you are finding who you are and who you can be, and getting different results from the world that matter because of the work you're doing with yourself.
I love it. I love it.
Right? I can't sleep at night. I'm so excited.
It's so it's simple and profound at the same time, right?
Right. I think we need simplicity. We need simple tools that have big results. Because I know you've spoken in other podcasts and in your work about this incredible time we're in, and the shifts that are occurring, and what's being asked of us, and where we can take this world next amidst what's crumbling right now and in chaos.
Right. I talk about, for me, my movement starts with one, right? That it's so important to engage and engage authentically. And uh, layering that with what you've just said, when you put consciousness to engaging authentically, that's what it's about, right? That it's not, I'm choosing to show up happier today. It's not that. It's I'm choosing to show up happier today. I'm grounded in that happiness. I am choosing to experience that, and I'm choosing to reflect that. That's authentic.
Right.
That's real, right?
If I don't feel happy yet, like actors know how to get to an emotion that they absolutely must get to in order to perform that scene in truth. So Tony Robbins talks about it too. It's changing your state.
Yes.
But lots of people, unless you're in the acting field, you're not aware of those very clear steps that you can take, and you just start to feel awesome. You're just invincible. But I was going to say too that another reason, like when I begin delivering this material, which I've started to in the bigger ways I want to talk to so many different people in different areas, right? The personal development world is rich with everyone's coming at this same core concept from so many different ways. And this may be one, that people who are deep in that world maybe haven't thought of yet. And I also want to talk to performers, because if I had realized this, I wasn't supposed to realize it until now, but I was totally separating. I had all these skills, but I was keeping them up on stage. And I didn't realize that I could use my skills in my real life. It just didn't occur to me. My real life, where I was getting super down about why things weren't happening in the certain way yet, or whatever, down about the things that you get down about. But if I had realized, I can do the things that I'm getting ready to teach now, it would have been such a game changer. But obviously, I know it's all supposed to unfold the way, but that's part of my eureka moment. So I do want to speak to this as well, because so many actors are miserable. And, they don't have to be, because they've got everything that they need. Everybody does.
Isn't that amazing, right? That's the Wizard of Oz. In my coaching, will often talk about the Wizard of Oz moment, where
Really,
yes, where we uncover that thing that was so terrible to step in and do, or that thing that was so terrible to say, and finding that courage. And it's like, I was the coach as the catalyst, but I didn't do that thing. So, cowardly lion, you have that courage. It's been in you that whole time. What we needed to do was to clear out some of the old stories, replace them with new stories, and demonstrate to you as an individual that you can actually do that thing. And right. And so much of what happens for individuals along the way, for any of us along the way, is that we we have these stories. A lot of my current writing is about, I'm kind of anti the notion of self-limiting beliefs. And the reason I'm anti that is that if you knew what they were, like, well, what are your self-limiting beliefs? And well, if I knew what they were, I'd wrestle them to the ground. So I approach it from the angle of, what stories have you been telling yourself? And from there, what actions have you been taking, right? And from there, what results are you getting? And if you don't know any of that, let's look at your results and work backwards, right? So here's a question I have for you, though. Just circling back, is this: you have all these skills for stage. When you apply them to what you've called real life, I would call it daily life, right? Because we're all sort of wondering, what's real about any of what we're experiencing right now. I go to this existential place. I'm a bit of a philosopher. So it's like, so when we apply this to our daily life, how do you know that it's not authentic or that it is? When does it ever feel fake? You know, that you've got this, and you've talked about this, so I want you to talk about it a little bit more, because you talked about this in as part of your speech. Um, and we both referenced Trisha, so I wanted to give a shout out to her specifically. Trisha Brook is an award-winning director that has guided each of us in our speaking careers and paths, and she's just one heck of a mentor, and we both love her dearly. So, and she has, just another shout out, she has this great book called The Influential Voice that needs to be seen. So, read. Anyway, there's a little quick plug for Trisha, who's going to be on another podcast with me shortly. Talk about life, talk about real life, talk about authenticity versus fake, and how do the skills get you through daily life? It's all messed up or mixed up in there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the good news is that everybody has their internal compass, and whether or not you've been paying attention to it, it's there. And you absolutely, I mean, I'm someone who feels things, and I've been practicing tuning into how things feel always. But even if you've not been practicing that, everybody has it. And you can absolutely feel in your gut when something is ringing true or not. And it's not about whether things feel good or bad, or even if they're neutral. All kinds of feelings, are true. The question then is, what do you do with it? And how does that translate to problem solving? I think, like, what you can do with these feelings can create different results through application then. And you're paying more attention to what it feels like, what it is, what it could mean, and then that kind of consciousness around it, starts to change everything. An actor's mindset in particular, changes how actors problem solve very differently than we do in daily life, because circumstances are different and their relationship to time is different. And they find their way through question asking, whereas we feel what we feel and then make like a statement or a demand. Lots of times we're shutting doors all the time. We're feeling what we feel and then we judge and shut a door maybe, or, whatever it might be. But, I'm just realizing, actors just do often the opposite of what our instinct is to do in daily life, in our daily motions. So it's about wanting to find your energy, your feelings, and then the work of wielding that energy. And I really do believe it's an energetic world. It's a vibrational world. And you're an instrument. If you can view yourself as an instrument that is to be tuned, and either you are doing your tuning, or outside circumstances and the world, you're tuning by default, but we're always tuning. So I think that's the work, is the fine tuning and the crafting, and what kind of stories you're telling and then rehearsing. I think so often we just rehearse unhelpful stories and
so good.
Reject certain stories, even though whatever story we're in, no matter how much we don't like it, perhaps it has to be accepted. And that's where you can then work forward. So different relationships, your feelings and different relationships to compassion and to judgment. It's all through this different door through which actors come in at it. And I really just want to share those tools, starting with mindset and then into concrete tools with as many people as I can.
All right, so I'm going to recap some things, and I'd like you to be thinking about 2 or 3 tools that you can share. Mindset certainly is one. Presence is what you're talking about, right? True presence. And without a clarity of values. And this is where I start with my coaching, right? And it sounds like we have a similar path, though a different direction to get there, which is part of what's
Exciting.
fascinating for me. And part of what I love about One Sharp Sword is that we can each have our own sharp sword. And the concept of one sharp sword is that one sharp sword beats 10,000 dull ones. So we each have our sword and can cut through to what matters most. You do it slightly differently than I do. Still, we're talking about attention. Still, we're talking about presence. We're talking about intention. I talk about deliberately, actively, positively. Like that is now a trademarked phrase for me because I use it so much to define exactly how we need to show up deliberately. Show up deliberately, be intentional, right? Be active in that and be positive, because you could show up deliberately, actively, negatively, right? And
For sure.
that's only destructive. So I love this. I'm going to repeat some of the things I've been writing down. Actors problem solve differently because of circumstances, and their relationship with time is different. I love that. There's a way of approaching any circumstance that you can bring to the moment, which is it's fabulous. You said that it's about wanting to find your energy. First of all, this is a twofold statement. It's about wanting to find your energy, and so many people get through the day. There's a saying that a lot of people will tiptoe through life hoping to make it safely to the end, and that's not what life is about, right? So it's about wanting to find your energy and feelings and then wielding that energy. And it's like that's what got me back to talking about one sharp sword. It's like that energy is your sharp sword. Be intentional with it, be deliberate about it. There's a concept of the threshold trigger. Have you heard of that? I
Like
will.
like a tipping point concept?
No, well, so it's not really a tipping point. The threshold, if you think of the threshold of a door, that, I call it the magical doorway. Some people call it the threshold trigger. And for years, I've called it the threshold trigger. It really is like a magical doorway where you choose every time you cross a doorway, you choose how to be in that next room. Right? So the challenge is, what does the person on the other side of this door need from me? How can I show up at my best for whoever is on the other side of this door? And recently, what I've come to do is I set up my studio differently recently as a result of my work with Kate McKinnon, who's been on my podcast as well, doing some feng shui stuff. And I was realizing I would come in and it just felt like flow, and I'd sit down and I'd start work. And I was realizing I was not truly intentional coming into this room. This is my workspace. And there's a gravity that comes with that, right? Otherwise, it's just like, oh, okay, sit down and my chair is floppy and relaxing and I can tilt back in it and my computer's on and we just sort of do what we do. We get through the day and look what time it is. It's lunchtime, and look what time it is. It's time to wrap it up. And there's no intentionality, right? Now, I'm a little more intentional than that. What I had neglected to do was to use the threshold trigger that says, as soon as I'm in this room, this scene demands a different character presence, right? And that's what you've been talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So mindset, absolutely. We approach getting to mindset differently, and yet, boom, right? That's the whole thing. What deliberate intention do you have about any current scene you're playing? I think is really what you've said, isn't it?
Right. And also the work that comes before. We're often just used to jumping into moments. It's like, oh, I'll go in there and see what she says, or I'll just go and we go into reaction mode versus pre-paving the way, really examining what we think, what we feel. But there's also like not just putting those things in stone, helping define yourself and your intentions ahead of time, but also give freedom around that. So you're flexible and you've got this flexibility of responsiveness. It's kind of like a little buffer around you, and things can bounce off. You're just rooted, you're conscious, you're connected to the situation because you've connected to yourself in advance. And you're listening. So you are more clear. You're sending a more clear signal. You're going to receive a clearer signal. And it's like a really nice tennis match. If you're present, you're going to get just more of what you want. And maybe you're going to get something you don't want, but either way, you're creating more of a conscious life that will deliver results that you will be conscious of. And in that space, I think you'll be able to get, a sign or a signal that maybe you're supposed to get, or you'll just be more on your path. And your path is going to be completely different from anybody else's, your point of view. But you'll be able to feel more alive. You just feel more alive, and everybody wants to feel that. I think that's also why actors get completely addicted, like they get the bug, because in this process, you live 1000% every moment because you've planned it and studied it. And while that is different, like you can't plan out life the way you can in a story and a scene, but you can live in that rich way at all times, through this kind of work.
Love that.
So.
I love that. Yeah, don't don't throw that last little piece away. That's like boom, right? Yeah. You can live in this rich way because you choose to, right?
Right. Yes. And when you're living that richly, that's the real reward. Like then what happens to you and around you doesn't have the same stealing type of effect. Stealing, S-T-E-A-L. It doesn't steal from you because you are just so much more whole. And in that kind of satisfaction, you're less disappointed about things. You're less attached to outcome of what's actually happening because you're experiencing this wholeness of each moment and each day. And that's the feeling that I find that I'm looking for when I get something I want. Maybe I wanted that role, or I want that sale, or whatever it might be. Or I want this person to react this way and they don't. But I'm in myself and I'm in my purpose and I feel freaking alive. And so life's just better. So things don't bug you as much. There's just one thing I will absolutely be writing about and teaching is the actor's perspective, which comes straight from mindset. And I could talk for an hour about perspective, but I think the perspective is the antidote to all that ails, I think, and how you can craft that to your benefit.
You are singing my song, really, truly. Like that's it's one of the reasons I wanted you on One Sharp Sword with me, is that there's so much resonance. It's like, this is so good. Perspective is everything. It's one of the reasons that top performers have coaches, that actors have directors, that the highest athletes have 2, 4, 6 various coaches for various things that they're doing. One of the reasons that I've moved from being a leadership advisor to being a breakthrough success coach, right, is all about, it's bringing that perspective, right? That it's about, you can't have a breakthrough if you're only doing what you know, right? And that I have a little thing I say, that you can't ask a fish what water is like, And that's for two reasons. One is fish don't know anything other than water. And the other is most fish don't talk, so you wouldn't get a good answer anyway. So, so there you go. I love that, though. Perspective is everything. And if you can choose a different perspective, it makes a gigantic difference. Are you familiar with Edward de Bono's work?
No.
Okay, so Edward de Bono. Well, maybe I'll do a podcast on this. He talks about, he was a great thinker in the 50s and 60s. It's weird to say of the last century, but Edward de Bono did a whole thing on what's called lateral thinking, and he had an exercise called 6 hats. And basically, the idea is that if you chose to approach a problem from a very different perspective, what would you see? Right? So one of the things that, as a consultant to leaders, one of the things I would have them do is pick different roles. We're trying to conquer this big problem of sales or of operations or whatever. And so around the boardroom table, I'm passing out roll sheets, right? You're a 4-year-old girl to this big burly, senior vice president. You are Abraham Lincoln. You are Maya Angelou. You are, right? And so everybody gets a different perspective, and must answer the pressing question from that perspective.
Hmm.
And when you're intentional about, all right, if I could only see the world through this lens, how would my world change? That's magical. That is, and I know you know this, that's magical, right? Because it affects how you play the scene in your life. So that goes back to, is it fake or is it real? Like,
Right. And then this is so perfect, Wayne, because when you step over there, because you're like, okay, I'm not going to be me. I'm going to take on this other perspective. You enter into a willingness to see through these other eyes that you may not necessarily have. But then when you do that, you feel differently and you can see differently. And then my favorite part is that you prove to yourself that you have the power to change your thoughts, change your emotions, change your state of thinking to something that can serve you better. And that's where the personal development comes in. It's like pairing those concepts with doing it to work on yourself. And that's perfect. Thank you for telling me.
I'll put that reference in my show notes as well. Edward de Bono. Yeah, and you and I can have conversations offline. And if any of the listeners or viewers of this have questions or want to pursue that, they can reach out to either you or me about how do you change perspective, right? So this is all good. All right. So other tools that you want to bring up, other ideas or tools that you want to bring up?
I think the biggest ones are consciousness around mindset, meaning, well, my whole 8-minute talk was all about mindset. So, So basically, without going into too much detail, it's like there's the mindset that sets your tone, your energetic, emotional tone, basically, and your perspective starts with the mindset. And then from there, it's the defining and the journey, which I think the first step, what I've always used and what I've been taught is get there through question asking. So I said earlier, usually in life, we get places often through statements, or through kind of a judgmental stance to start with, not meaning like harsh judgment, but just in the mere observation of something, we're making a judgment about it. So the actor method is just question after question after question after question after question. And often they ask questions that often people might not ask themselves their whole lives. Like, who am I? Who am I really? And what does that mean? Like, how do you find out who you are? And or in any one circumstance. So this is a simple tool that I like to use. So say your children, this is so real life, your children are like losing their minds. They won't get their shoes on. You have to go to school. You have to get there. You're going to be late. All the things that you can really spin off first thing in the day to just be like mad and feel out of control. And in your mind, like our default, we were talking about that earlier, is the negative. So, and to react, right? And take things personally. So they're doing this, and right away I'm like, why is this so hard? Why does this feel so hard right now? And for real, it feels hard right then. And when I ask that question, the mind is literally programmed to mirror the type of question that's asked. And so if you say, you could do this in your day for anything that comes up. If you say, why is this so hard? Your mind will answer why it's hard. Well, it's hard because, they're young. They don't know how to tie their shoe. We didn't start earlier. This is impossible. They can't communicate very well. It'll answer endlessly why it's hard. But if you ask a different question, and this is where actors take themselves to where they need to go or want to go, then the mind will mirror that side. So if you switch it to just ask simply, why is this so easy? First of all, that makes you laugh because you don't really feel like it's easy right then, but you're like, why is this so easy? If you just ask that and let the answer come, your mind will start saying why it's easy, and there's a levity that comes in, like, or why is this so fun is a question you could ask instead, like, oh, because they're little jerks, and like, oh, look, he's actually really cute when he throws his shoe, and it changes your state. And then you are energetically different. And then you just feel different. And you've proven to yourself that it's different. And the answer is in the question. So you don't have to decide what the answers are as you go through something difficult or anything at all. You just need to ask different questions, better questions, different questions. And the question will lead you to a different spot without much work at all. Because your brain, this is how you can train your brain to be better and more productive and just have more discoveries. Because another thing human beings thrive off of is being in discovery mode and learning mode and feeling like you're growing. And so real quickly, another concept I love is this concept of de-adulting. Speaking of children, and my children have been another big learning tool for me. Actors play, and we forget to play so much as grownups, and we forget our imaginations and the power in that, and the power in the questions, and the willingness to just be in a playful state, which is where all creativity lies, and where so much joy lies. So I'm going to have a whole chapter on de-adulting and how that can really serve us, as opposed to the adult conditioning that really can be so limiting. And we can feel it inside when we're squashing ourselves, which we so often are, and then we squash other people.
Love it. I love it, because there's so much emphasis now on, well, it's important to, step into doing the things that need to be done. And, this is what's called adulting. It's hard work. And it's like, well, they're getting through life. Yeah, there's tedious stuff to do. The dishes need doing. The laundry needs doing, the bills need paying. Okay, that's tough. And there are ways through it. And it goes back to mindset. If I were a puppy, I would have been wagging my tail and piddling on the floor with some of the stuff that you've been saying. I'm so happy with what you've brought here. This is so important. The journey, getting there through question asking. People who know me know that I'm a big fan of Curious George. That, Curious George is this curious little monkey. He gets into trouble, but he gets out of it because he has friends, and two, the curiosity is what keeps him alive and happy, right? And so one of the things that I teach is that you can't live in judgment if you're living in a space of curiosity. The curiosity and asking questions actually keeps you out of judgment. As long as you're not asking judgmental questions like, why is this guy such a little jerk, right? But even that's playful, can be. Really the questions are, well, what am I missing? Like, this behavior is showing up. What am I missing? Huge. Oh, Amelia, I'm so glad you're here. It's so good.
This is
I feel like you and I have a long future ahead together. I can feel it. It's like there's something there. So so glad to meet you. So glad to be doing this. Would you pronounce your last name? Is it a hard G or a soft G?
It's a hard G. It's Felbinger. Like my husband says, I put the gur in Felbinger.
Felbinger. All right. So Amelia Felbinger,
Yeah.
which is probably how I would have pronounced it. I just realized partway through our conversation that I didn't pronounce it. I just announced you as Amelia is joining me. So Amelia Felbinger, how do people reach you? What haven't we talked about? Like, I want to put a bow on this and allow you to say anything that we haven't said or that you haven't said that you definitely want to make sure gets said, and let people know how to reach you and how to keep track of you, because we all want your book. We want you to be successful, and we all want your book.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm forming my speaker website now, so that's under construction. It will all be under the brand of the Be Happy Business. And
Is it the Be Happy Business or Be Happy Business?
the Be Happy Business.
Okay, the Be Happy Business.
Yeah.
And I assume that's going to be .com.
Yes.
Okay.
Under construction, out soon to be out. And then the programming and talks that I'm forming is called Real People Magic, all based on a funny commercial that we don't have to talk about that now, but that was a catalyst for all of this, about people being real or not. And so, but really right now it's all about Instagram and Facebook. So it's at the Be Happy Business is Facebook, is Instagram. Or you can search Amelia Felbinger and you'll see the Be Happy Business come up on Instagram. And then that's linked directly to my Facebook group that I have. But I'm just on fire to take my 8-minute talk as is, which will be out on YouTube around the 10th. So I'll be posting that on my site and everywhere on social if you're following me by then. I want to, put that out. I absolutely want to start speaking to organizations and membership groups and schools, and I'm forming who that audience is right now, but really anybody who wants change in their hearts and minds and a new way of thinking about growth and self-development. So
people, here's what's interesting. What I've learned is that so many of us are allergic to the word change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That it's like, we don't dare change. And still for so many of us, it's like, yeah, things need to change. Of course I want change. Right. And so what I've learned is to talk about growth. That implies change. That if you're not growing, then you're dying. Right. And so there's almost this this command or demand that we step into growth and embrace that. So yeah, that's awesome. Amelia Felbinger, putting the gur in Felbinger. That's awesome. The Be Happy Business, please reach out. The thing about podcasts and YouTube videos and such is that they are searchable for years and years to come. So we never put dates on things. It's like, it's already happened. It's already there. The Be Happy Business. Go find that. Amelia, thank you so much. It's amazing to have you here. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased.
I am just as excited and honored. Thank you so much. And I love the important work you are doing.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right. Well, this is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. Wayne Pernell, Dr. P.